A+ലേക്കുള്ള വഴി ഇനി തനിയെ തുറക്കാം. Subscribe to the ENCLAPS channel. Ring the bell button and open success. It's that easy.
Stories can be entertaining and enlightening, but not dangerous. I hope you got my point. Yes? We are back with what Chimamanda calls it as the danger of a single story. She has already shared two of her personal experiences. And now, let's listen as she adds on.
Years later, I thought about this when I left Nigeria to go to university in the United States. I was 19. My American roommate was shocked by me. She asked where I had learned to speak English so well and was confused when I said that Nigeria happened to have English as its official language. She asked if she could listen to what she called my tribal music and was consequently very disappointed when I produced my tape of Mariah Carey. She assumed that I did not know how to use his stove. What struck me was this. She had felt sorry for me even before she saw me. Her default position toward me as an African was a kind of patronizing, well-meaning pity. My roommate had a single story of Africa, a single story of catastrophe. In this single story, there was no possibility of Africans being similar to her in any way. No possibility of feelings more complex than pity. No possibility of a connection as human equals.
Why was her American roommate shocked? She was shocked to hear Chimamanda speak English fluently. The roommate got confused when she added that Nigeria had English as its official language. She asked Chimamanda to sing the tribal music, but got very disappointed when she sang the tape of Mariah Carey. Now, all this was because the American roommate had only one picture, or rather one story about Africa and Africans. She had a kind of patronizing, well-meaning pity towards Africans. In a single story about Africa, there was no possibility of Africans being similar to her in any ways. No possibility of feelings more complex than pity. And no possibility of a connection as human equals. Chimamanda had a number of such similar experiences in the United States where people always turned to her whenever a topic on Africa came up, and slowly she started to embrace her identity as an African in the US. But Chimamanda understands the psychology behind her roommate's behavior very well. Even if she herself was brought up in America, she would have also thought about Africa as a land of beautiful landscapes and animals, but incomprehensible people who needs external support to speak out for them and help them. That's how the world sees Africa and its natives. Different versions of same single story about Africa.
As had a professor who once told me that my novel was not authentically African. Now, I was quite willing to contend that there were a number of things wrong with the novel, that it had failed in a number of places. But I had not quite imagined that it had failed at achieving something called African authenticity. In fact, I did not know what African authenticity was. The professor told me that my characters were too much like him, an educated and middle-class man. My characters drove cars. They were not starving. Therefore, they were not authentically African.
Now, that's so sad. Even her professor was carrying in his mind a single story of Africa. He told that the characters in her novels were not authentically African because they were educated. Even the professor did not have the idea of an African being educated, driving cars. For him, that was not how Africans lived. So, that's two more of her personal experiences of the danger of a single story. And this time, the story was about her motherland. Coming back to her personal life, She says that she always felt that winters have to have unhappy childhoods to be successful. Chimamanda had a very happy childhood full of love and laughter in a close-knit family. But her single story of a writer's life made her foolishly think about horrible things her parents had done to her, and she found none. That was funny.
But I also had grandfathers who died in refugee camps. My cousin Polly died because he could not get adequate health care. One of my closest friends, Okoloma, died in a plane crash because our fire trucks did not have water. I grew up under repressive military governments that devalued education so that sometimes my parents were not paid their salaries. And so, as a child, I saw jam disappear from the breakfast table. Then margarine disappear. Then bread became too expensive. Then milk became rationed. And most of all, a kind of normalized political fear invaded our lives. All of these stories make me who I am. But to insist on only these negative stories is to flatten my experience and to overlook the many other stories that formed me. The single story creates stereotypes, and the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story.
Yes, children, Chimamanda admits a few of her dark episodes in life which portrays Africa just as how the world sees it. She grew up in a repressive military government that devalued education, so that sometimes her parents didn't get their salary. But she adds on and says that all those experiences, good or bad, form the person she is now. She didn't want to focus only on the negative experiences in life. She concludes her speech by saying the stories create stereotypes. And the problem with stereotypes is that though they are true, they are incomplete. They don't give you a complete picture of something or someone. They make one story become the only story. And that's the danger hidden in single stories. With that, we come to an end of the TED speech by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. So dear children, do not indulge yourselves in the danger of a single stories. Look at the world around you with a broader, wider perspective. Bye.
3 ലക്ഷത്തിലേറെ വരുന്ന ചോദ്യോത്തരങ്ങൾ ഏറ്റവും കുറഞ്ഞ ചിലവിൽ സ്വന്തമാക്കുവാൻ ഉടൻ തന്നെ ഡൗൺലോഡ് ചെയ്യൂ എൻക്ലാപ്സ് ദ ലേണിംഗ് ആപ്പ്.